I was thinking about this the other day. We spend um, a truly staggering amount of our waking hours just obsessively focused on building our own lives.
Oh, totally. It's like a full-time job.
Right. We operate like these frantic master architects of our own existence. We meticulously draft the blueprints for our careers, and we zone the neighborhoods for our families.
Paving the highways toward our personal goals.
Exactly. Paving the highways, erecting these massive, elaborate cities for ourselves to inhabit. We are just the absolute center of our own urban planning.
We really are.
But if we actually step back and examine the physics of human connection, we rarely, if ever, stop to consider this much stranger and, frankly, much more profound reality.
Which is?
That every single day, whether you realize it or not, you are actively becoming a physical structure inside someone else's mental and emotional city. You are taking up real estate in the minds of your partners, your coworkers, your kids, your friends.
Yeah, and that completely upends the traditional paradigm of how we view human interaction, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because we are so conditioned to think of relationships as something we do, like an activity.
Right, like playing tennis or something.
Exactly. We view them as a series of actions or a collection of shared events, maybe a transactional exchange of energy. But when you really sit with this architectural framework, it transforms relationships from a verb into a noun.
I love that. From a verb to a noun.
Right. It changes a relationship from an action you perform into a space that you become. You aren't just bumping into another person on the street. You are taking up permanent structural space in their internal world.
Wow.
And the quality of that space, well, it dictates absolutely everything about how they will interact with you.
So true. Well, welcome to the deep dive.
Hmm?
Today we are exploring a framework that gets right to the heart of this incredible idea. We are looking at relational topology. Specifically, we're diving into the insights from Part 3, which is authored by Carlton Doxey Johnson from the Spectrix Metaphysical Institute.
It's such a brilliant text.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the mission for this deep dive is to explore the specific architectural concepts behind human presence and relational stability. So think about how we normally use maps. You pull up a map on your phone to figure out where you are going, right?
Yeah. You find your blue dot and you route to your destination.
Exactly. We locate ourselves and we find our destination. But Johnson's framework asks us to flip the map entirely upside down. It asks this terrifyingly beautiful question. Where do we appear on someone else's map?
It's a heavy question.
Oh, it really makes you think. So today, we are going to map out exactly how we show up in the cities of other people's lives and what kind of structures we are actively building in their minds.
And I think what makes this approach so compelling is that it completely abandons the abstract, highly clinical psychological jargon we're usually so used to wading through.
Oh yeah, no weird clinical terms here.
Right. It grounds human connection in something deeply tangible, spatial awareness and architecture. It forces us to move beyond that standard binary question of, do I have a good relationship with this person?
Right, the whole good or bad relationship label.
Exactly. Instead, it asks, what specific kind of environment do they encounter when they walk through my doors? Are you a place of safety? Are you a noisy, chaotic intersection? Are you a place of transit or just deep confusion?
Yeah.
Relational topology gives us this precise vocabulary to identify the exact nature of our presence in the lives of the people around us.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to even begin to understand what kind of space we take up in someone else's city, we first have to understand the literal architecture of our own character.
Right, the building blocks.
Yeah, so Johnson introduces this with the first principle. Presence is architecture. He argues something that honestly flies in the face of modern storytelling and pop culture.
Oh, completely.
The premise is that relationships aren't actually built on grand, dramatic moments, but on repeated, unglamorous presence.
Unglamorous is the perfect word for it.
Totally. And the structural metaphors here are very specific. He says consistency is defined as the foundation. Trust acts as the structural steel. And character, this is the big one, character, becomes the load-bearing walls.
We really need to look at the physics of a load-bearing wall to understand why that metaphor is so precise.
Yeah, walk us through that.
Well, think about walking into a beautifully designed house. What do you actually notice? You notice the crown molding, the way the light hits the hardwood floors, the expensive fixtures, the artwork.
The superficial stuff.
Exactly. You never, ever walk into a living room and say, wow, look at the craftsmanship on that load-bearing wall.
Right. Because you can't even see it.
Exactly. It is entirely invisible. It is hidden behind drywall. It doesn't draw any attention to itself at all. Its singular defining purpose is to hold the weight of the roof when pressure is applied. It distributes the sheer crushing force of gravity down into the foundation. And character, in the context of relational topology, functions exactly the same way. It is the unseen, uncelebrated strength that keeps a dynamic from collapsing when the inevitable weight of life suddenly presses down.
Like what kind of weight?
You know, a financial crisis, a severe health diagnosis, a profound betrayal. When that suddenly presses down on the roof of the relationship, the character is what holds it up.
I mean, I understand the physics of it, and it makes logical sense, but I do have to push back a little on this idea that dramatic moments don't build relationships.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's look at real life. What if you literally save someone's life in a crisis? Or what about those massive, life-altering crying on the kitchen floor heart-to-hearts you have with a friend at 2 in the morning?
We all have those.
Right. We all have those memories, and they feel foundational. Doesn't a dramatic moment like that construct a whole building in one night? Doesn't it instantly cement a bond?
Well, it creates a bond, certainly. But we have to distinguish between a bond and a stable structure.
Okay, Johnson addresses this instinct with a brilliant piece of logic. He states, no building announces itself by speaking. It announces itself by standing.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Isn't it? A dramatic moment like that late-night kitchen floor conversation or an expensive surprise vacation or even a heroic intervention, it's architecturally equivalent to the ribbon-cutting ceremony.
Oh, okay.
It's the grand opening of a building. It's flashy. It's highly emotional. There are flashing cameras. It gets all the attention. But a ribbon-cutting ceremony doesn't hold the roof up during a hurricane.
Right. So the ribbon-cutting ceremony is really just the marketing for the building.
Exactly. It's just PR, the everyday consistency, the quiet, boring, repeated presence day after day, the fact that you show up on time, the fact that you don't lose your temper over small things, the fact that you keep your word.
The unglamorous stuff.
The unglamorous stuff. That is the actual brick and mortar.
Yeah.
You can have the most spectacular, emotionally resonant ribbon-cutting ceremony in the world, but if there's no foundation of consistent behavior underneath it, the building is a hazard.
It's just a hollow shell.
Right. It will collapse the moment the weather turns. You simply cannot build a stable structure out of fireworks.
You cannot build a stable structure out of fireworks. That is a brilliant way to put it. Because fireworks are designed to explode and vanish.
Yes.
They don't leave anything behind but smoke. That metaphor really forces the issue. It makes me want to ask you, the person listening to this right now, when the people in your life think of you, what kind of structural integrity comes to mind?
That's the real question.
Right. Do they experience stability? Or do they experience the anxiety of waiting for a collapse? Do they feel peace, or do they feel the pressure of a shifting foundation because you are already becoming something inside their internal city? You don't get to opt out of this construction process just because you aren't paying attention to it.
And the construction is happening continuously. Every single text message you send, every time you listen without interrupting, every time you roll your eyes, you are laying a brick, placing a steel beam, or actively undermining the foundation.
Yeah. Which naturally bridges us to the mechanics of how people actually experience this architecture. I mean, if our presence is a building, how do people navigate to it? We aren't static objects waiting to be discovered.
No, we are constantly broadcasting our location. And that brings us to the second principle. We teach others how to find us.
Yes.
The core proposition here is that we don't just passively exist in someone's city. We actively instruct them on how to interact with our structure. Every single repeated interaction becomes an instruction manual that the other person internalizes.
What's fascinating here is that this completely demystifies so many of the frustrations we have in our social and professional lives.
How so?
Well, we constantly wonder why certain people pull away from us or why others naturally draw close and open up. We tend to treat other people's reactions to us like unpredictable emotional weather, like, oh, he's just being distant today.
Right, like it's totally out of our control.
Exactly. But relational topology frames this as a highly predictable, deeply ingrained neurological loop. It provides actionable cause and effect pairings to illustrate exactly how we cultivate a sense of refuge or, conversely, a sense of danger. We are the ones writing the code for how people approach us.
Okay, let's break down those pairings because they are incredibly confronting. The first one is, If every conversation brings criticism, people learn caution.
It's so simple, but so true.
That is classical conditioning at its finest. If I reach out and touch a hot stove every time I walk into a kitchen, my brain doesn't need to philosophize about the nature of heat.
No, it just learns.
Right, it just rewires my physical behavior so that I start walking through that kitchen with my hands pulled tight against my chest.
And the psychological equivalent of pulling your hands to your chest is a defensive posture. If a coworker or spouse knows that interacting with you usually results in them being subtly critiqued or corrected or diminished in some way, their internal map literally marks your building as a hazard zone.
A hazard zone, wow.
Yeah. They don't necessarily stop visiting you entirely. Maybe they have to interact with you for work, or maybe you're married to them, but they put on their emotional armor before they turn the doorknob.
They brace themselves.
Exactly. They stop offering vulnerable ideas. They stick to safe, surface-level topics. You have actively instructed them to navigate you with caution.
And then on the flip side, the framework states, if every interaction produces peace, people learn refuge. I really want to zero in on the word produces here, because peace isn't just an absence of screaming, is it?
No, not at all.
It's not just a lack of conflict. It's something you actively generate.
It requires active emotional labor. Producing peace means you are regulating your own nervous system so that when someone else enters your space, their nervous system naturally co-regulates with yours.
That makes a lot of sense.
You are generating an environment of predictability where they know they won't be ambushed by a sudden mood swing or a passive-aggressive comment. And when you repeatedly produce that kind of baseline peace, the other person's internal map labels your architecture as a sanctuary.
A sanctuary.
Right. When the rest of their city is burning down, when their career is in chaos, they know exactly which door to run through.
Then we get to the third pairing. If every promise is honored, people learn trust. If every commitment dissolves, people learn distance.
This one is huge.
Think about it like a path through a dense woods. A path doesn't exist by magic. It didn't just organically appear out of nowhere one afternoon.
Right.
A path exists because someone walked that exact same route, stepping on the exact same dirt 100 times over. We pave the path to our front door with our repeated behaviors. If we repeatedly flake on plans, if we make commitments and let them dissolve, we are literally paving a road that leads directly away from our building.
We really are.
We are providing step-by-step instructions for them to keep their distance.
That analogy of a path is perfect because it highlights the learned nature of the behavior. People don't simply know your intentions. They don't have access to your internal monologue where you mean well but just get busy.
Right. I meant to call you.
Yeah, exactly. They only have access to the data you provide them through your actions over time. You're the author of the instruction manual. If someone reads the manual you wrote and they act accordingly by keeping their distance and not relying on you, you cannot blame them for following the precise instructions you gave them.
Which is a tough pill to swallow for anyone who constantly says, but they know I care about them.
Yeah, that doesn't hold up here.
No, they don't. They only know what the architecture of your actions proves.
Yeah.
So now that we understand how we instruct people to navigate toward or away from us, let's explore the specific spaces we can become once they arrive.
The fun part?
Yeah. The framework categorizes these structures, starting with spaces designed for safety and growth.
Yeah.
We're looking at the third principle, becoming a harbor, and contrasting it with the seventh principle, becoming good soil, which is essentially becoming a garden. Let's start with the harbor.
The harbor is arguably one of the most resonant images in relational topology because a harbor is a space of ultimate, uncompromising refuge. But it's vital to look at how Johnson defines a harbor. He doesn't define it by its grand capabilities. He defines it by what it refuses to do.
Right, it's the negative space of the definition. A harbor doesn't chase ships out into the open water.
No.
It doesn't imprison ships and refuse to let them leave. And crucially, it doesn't judge damaged ships when they limp in. It simply remains ready, steady, and present.
Which completely redefines our standard operating procedure for helping people. Let's look at the physical reality of a maritime harbor. A harbor does not have the power to remove the ocean.
Obviously.
Right. The hurricane is still raging. The waves are still 50 feet high. The currents are still lethal. The harbor cannot change the brutal nature of the sea. What it does is create a pocket of stillness that prepares a ship to eventually face the sea again. When someone you love is battered by life, when they are a damaged ship taking on water, Our immediate, deeply ingrained human instinct is to try and fix the ocean.
We want to control the weather.
Exactly. We want to solve their legal problem, fight their boss, fix their marriage, or tell them exactly what 5 steps they need to take right now to stop taking on water.
But wait, if someone I love is voluntarily sailing out into a hurricane over and over again making terrible life choices, shouldn't my harbor include a stern warning? I mean, if I just offer them a quiet place to dock without judging them, aren't I just enabling their bad navigation?
That is the big concern.
Am I just becoming a bed and breakfast for disaster?
That is the most common friction point with this principle. It's the confusion between harboring and enabling. But we have to look closer at the metaphor. A harbor has boundaries. The breakwater, that massive wall of rocks that stops the waves from coming in, that is a boundary. You're protecting your own internal waters so that they remain calm.
Okay, I see.
Harboring someone doesn't mean you fund their self-destruction or validate their toxic behavior, but it does mean that when they cross your threshold, the lecture stops.
The lecture stops.
A harbor doesn't stand on the dock with a megaphone yelling, "I told you that storm was a Category 5, why didn't you look at the radar?" The harbor recognizes that a ship with a broken mast cannot process a lecture on meteorology.
They just need the water to stop moving.
Exactly. They need absolute consistency and stillness. They need their nervous system to realize they are no longer drowning. You provide the physical and emotional rest required for them to drop anchor, patch their own sails, and regain their strength. The power of a harbor is incredibly passive on the surface, but it requires massive internal restraint on your part to not try and commandeer their ship.
Wow. I think everyone listening can immediately identify the harbors in their life. It's that one friend you call when you've made an absolute mess of everything, and you know they aren't going to start the conversation with, "Well, what did you expect?"
We all need that person.
We really do. But the framework pivots from the concrete and water of the harbor to an organic space. It talks about becoming good soil or becoming a garden. Cities have parks. They have organic spaces where things take root. But I have to be honest, being told to become dirt in someone else's life sounds incredibly passive.
It sounds like a demotion.
Yeah, it sounds like you were just laying down and letting people step all over you.
On a macro level, dirt looks inert. It looks like it does absolutely nothing but get walked on. But if you talk to a botanist or look at the ecological reality of good soil, it is one of the most highly active, complex, microscopic environments on Earth.
Okay, fair.
It is teeming with biology, breaking down nutrients, holding moisture, and creating the exact chemical balance needed for life to emerge. In relational topology, becoming good soil means cultivating a space for someone else's long-term growth. And the defining characteristic of good soil is that it never, ever competes with the seed.
What does competing with the seed look like in human terms?
It looks like a parent who forces their child to play a sport they have no interest in because the parent wants to live vicariously through them.
Wow. Yeah.
Or it looks like a mentor who gets jealous when their protege starts outperforming them. Good soil doesn't do that. Good soil creates the optimal conditions for growth and then completely removes its ego from the equation.
It's totally selfless.
It is. It doesn't force the seed to sprout on a specific timeline. It doesn't yell at the seed for growing too slowly. It cultivates futures without demanding immediate visible results to validate its own worth.
So it's the difference between short-term triage and long-term cultivation. If we compare them directly, the harbor offers immediate physical and emotional rest from trauma or exhaustion. It's the ER.
Yes.
But the garden, the good soil, provides the silent, egoless nourishment needed for long-term evolution.
That's a perfect distinction. If you are acting as good soil for someone, say a junior employee you are mentoring or a child you are raising, you are pouring nutrients into them, creating a safe environment, and then you have to possess the immense patience to step back.
And wait.
And wait. You might not see the harvest of your efforts for years or even decades. You don't get the immediate gratification of seeing the ship repaired and sailing out of the harbor the next morning. You just have to trust the slow, quiet, invisible work of cultivation.
And that requires a level of patience that our current culture actively despises.
We hate it.
We want life hacks for our relationships. We want a 5-minute conversation to yield a 30-year bond. But what we're talking about is tectonic, slow-moving architecture.
It takes time.
However, relationships aren't just about staying still, resting in a harbor, or slowly growing roots in a garden. Sometimes the most vital structures in our internal cities are the ones that facilitate movement. They move us from one era of our life to the next. Which brings us to the transitional roles. The fourth principle, becoming a bridge, and the fifth principle, becoming a gateway.
The architecture of movement. This is where relational topology acknowledges the fluidity of human life. We are all on a trajectory, and we often play a hyper-specific, time-limited role in the transit of others.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the psychology of being a bridge is complicated. The framework describes a bridge as a structure that connects worlds. It might connect two differing ideologies, two distant communities, two generations, or two completely different phases of a person's life. Sometimes, your entire architectural purpose in someone's city is simply to introduce them to the next chapter of their story. Without you acting as the bridge, two parts of their life would never meet. But the defining, somewhat tragic detail about a bridge is this. Bridges do not ask travelers to remain. They simply help them cross.
And that is the profound, bittersweet, emotional reality of being a bridge. You're absolutely essential for their survival and their progress, but you are not their final destination.
Right.
Think about it geographically. If a traveler stops halfway across a bridge and tries to build a house on it, they block all traffic, they expose themselves to high winds, and they undermine the structural integrity of the bridge itself. A bridge is engineered to be crossed, not inhabited.
So what does that look like in practice? Give us an example.
It looks like the friend who helps you survive a brutal divorce. For 2 years, they are your lifeline. They connect you from the collapse of your old life to the stability of your new one.
Yeah, they get you across the gap.
But once you reach the other side, once you rebuild, the dynamic of that friendship often changes. Sometimes it fades, and the instinct is to feel used or to feel bitter that they moved on.
Sure, you'd think, hey, where did you go?
Exactly. But if you understand relational topology, you realize your role wasn't meant to be permanent housing. Your structural purpose in their map was fulfilled. You helped them cross the chasm. It requires a profound unselfishness to let the traveler keep walking once they reach the other side.
That takes a staggering amount of humility to realize that in someone else's story, you are a transitional chapter and not the whole book.
It really does.
And that flows directly into the concept of the gateway. Now, Johnson says that teachers, parents, mentors, and leaders frequently act as gateways. Sometimes one single conversation with a gateway can open an entirely new universe for a person. But he clarifies that gateways don't create destiny, they permit entrance.
We need to draw a very sharp line between a bridge and a gateway because while they both involve movement, they serve entirely different psychological functions.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Yeah. A bridge gets you safely over a known hazard. It spans a gap between point A and point B. When you step onto a bridge, you can usually see the other side. You know where you were going. The bridge just makes it possible to get there without falling in the river.
Right, the destination is visible.
But a gateway is a threshold into the absolute unknown. When you stand before a gateway, you aren't looking at point B. You are looking at an entirely new, protected or restricted dimension. A bridge provides safe passage. A gateway provides access, permission, and validation.
It's like a mentor who sees a talent in you that you didn't know you had, and they make one phone call that gets you into a room you didn't even know existed.
Yes.
They don't just help you cross a river, they open the gate to a world you couldn't see from the street.
Exactly. I once had a professor in college who acted as a gateway for me. I was struggling with my major, completely lost, and he handed me a book on systems theory. He didn't mentor me for 4 years. He didn't walk me step by step through my thesis. He just unlocked the gate, pointed to the path, and went back to his office. But just like the bridge, the gateway requires the person acting as that structure to let the traveler pass through alone.
You can't go with them.
No. You hold the heavy iron door open, but you don't always get to walk through it with them. If you try to hold their hand and drag them through the gate, you transition from being a gateway to being a warden.
Oh man, a warden. You're facilitating their journey, not capturing it. So we've mapped out where people rest in harbors, how they grow in gardens, and how they transition across bridges and through gateways. But what happens when the map itself fails?
When things go wrong.
Yeah. What happens when a person has no idea where they are, when they're lost in the dark or navigating total chaos? That brings us to the orienting elements of a city. The sixth principle, becoming a landmark, and the eighth principle, becoming light.
Without these orienting elements, navigating the internal city during a crisis becomes impossible. These are the structures that save us from despair.
Let's contrast a landmark with what we just talked about, a gateway. Because this contrast really crystallizes the whole philosophy of how we show up for people. A gateway is something you walk through to leave your current reality and enter a new one. It's about change. But a landmark is something you look at to remember exactly where you are. It's about permanence.
That is the essential distinction. Johnson offers a deeply spiritual and emotional definition of a landmark. He suggests that certain people become landmarks in our lives not because they are flashy, famous, or particularly loud, but because they are unforgettable in their absolute consistency.
Right.
Think about how a physical landmark functions in a real city. If you are wandering around London and you get completely turned around in the winding streets, you look up, you look for the Shard, or you look for Big Ben.
Something tall and fixed.
Exactly. The moment your eyes lock onto that towering fixed monument, your internal map instantly clicks back into place. You know where north is. You know where the river is. You know where you are in relation to that unmoving point.
Johnson writes this incredible line in the text. When confusion came, they remained calm. When everyone else fled, they remained faithful. When life became uncertain, they reminded others what was true.
That is the ultimate essence of relational orientation. When someone's life unexpectedly detonates, when they lose a spouse, when their business goes bankrupt, when their reputation is destroyed, they are suddenly wandering through their own internal city in a state of sheer panic.
Yeah, total chaos.
Nothing looks familiar. They are entirely disoriented. A person who functions as a landmark provides emotional and spiritual true north in that moment. Their character doesn't wildly fluctuate based on the circumstances. By simply observing the landmark, by interacting with someone who remains profoundly steady, calm, and rooted in their values, the lost traveler begins to automatically orient themselves.
They find their footing again.
They remember who they are by seeing who you are. The unshakable character of the landmark anchors the traveler's spinning compass.
Which relieves so much pressure. It means that when your friend's life falls apart, you don't necessarily need to have the perfect life-altering advice to give them.
No, you don't.
You don't have to have a PhD in crisis management. You just have to be exactly who you have always been. You just have to stand tall, remain visible, and not panic with them. But what happens when the city goes completely pitch black? Johnson points out that cities become truly lethal when the power grid fails and every light goes out. And this brings us to becoming light, which the framework defines as emotional illumination.
Emotional illumination is the final and perhaps most vital principle. Johnson describes it as providing hope, encouragement, wisdom, patience, and forgiveness. But he doesn't treat these virtues as abstract, feel-good concepts.
How does he treat them?
He treats them as highly functional architectural tools. They are the streetlights by which other people navigate when they are too exhausted or depressed to see the big picture.
There is a specific line in this section that I honestly think might be the most liberating sentence in the entire document. It completely changed how I view helping people. It says, sometimes the greatest gift we offer another person isn't an answer. It's enough light for them to take the next step.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is incredibly liberating because it dismantles the savior complex that so many of us carry. It relieves us of this massive, crushing expectation that we have to solve someone's entire life.
We put so much pressure on ourselves.
We really do. When someone we deeply care about is plunged into darkness, maybe severe depression or a period of intense grief, we often feel like we need to turn on the sun. We feel this frantic need to give them a comprehensive 10-point plan to fix everything, to illuminate their entire future from now until retirement all at once.
And when we can't do that, we feel like we are failing them. So sometimes we just pull away entirely out of guilt.
Exactly. We burn ourselves out trying to be the sun. But the framework says, no, you don't need to be the sun. You just need to be a streetlight.
Just a streetlight.
You just need to offer a tiny bit of encouragement, a sliver of patience, just enough illumination for them to see the ground immediately in front of their feet. You give them the ability to safely take one single, solitary step forward without tripping. You don't need to light up the whole miles-long road. That small, hyper-focused beam of safety is the true gift of light.
Just enough light for the next step. So what does this all mean for us? When we pull the lens all the way back and look at this vast map, this entire philosophy of relational topology, we see that it isn't just a diagnostic tool to figure out who belongs where in our own lives.
Not at all.
It's a mandate to be radically, unapologetically intentional about the kind of physical space we are becoming in the minds of others. Every single day you walk into someone else's city. Are you adding to their anxiety as a noisy, unpredictable intersection? Or are you providing the structural architecture they desperately need to survive and thrive? Are you choosing to be a harbor, a bridge, a gate, a garden, a landmark, or a light?
Johnson's closing thought provides a stunning synthesis of this entire mission. He notes that a city, and by direct extension, a human life, is ultimately remembered and valued by its hospitality and its character.
Not its size.
Exactly. It is not remembered by its sheer size, its hoarded wealth, or its worldly success. The ultimate highest goal of our existence isn't merely to be successful in our own isolated vacuum, building a mansion on an island of one. The goal is to be structurally beneficial to others. It is the quiet, noble invitation of every human life to leave every single city we enter a little stronger, a little more fortified, and a little more illuminated than it was on the day we first arrived.
To leave every city a little stronger. We started this deep dive by talking about our obsession with building our own lives, drawing our own blueprints, and constructing our own personal empires. But as we close today, I want to leave you with a very different kind of architectural challenge, something to deeply mull over on your own tonight. If you had to sit down right now and draw a literal blueprint of the city you've built inside your closest friend or your partner's mind, based purely on your daily actions and your repeated presence over the last year, well, what exactly have you built? What does that blueprint actually look like? And if you look closely at that map and you don't like the architecture you see, what kind of bricks are you going to lay tomorrow?